the greatest event in the history of the Muslims in England.
Wow.
How is it that a little tiny community, a nascent community, which emerged in a very little town in India, could make a mosque when the entire Muslim world raising funds for it, and kings and princes and princesses and who not, raising funds for it in thousands, couldn't?
They know this is an Ahmadiyya Muslim mosque.
It was the hub of Muslim activity.
The Ahmadis are clearly keeping their doors open for other Muslims to come and engage and work together.
Yeah. A Palestinian delegation had come, and Faisal was there also to support. Jinnah was a frequent visitor of the London Mosque. He chose the London Mosque to come and informally announce his return into Indian politics.
No one can deny that the work Ahmadis are doing in spreading Islam in England and in the West is amazing. That's basically Dawah work.
That is Dawah.
Right, that's Dawah. All the
Absolutely.
Dawah was
Yeah.
being led by Ahmadi Muslims.
Yeah, the mosque wasn't an ordinary place to be.
So I'm going to start with a news story. It's from 1926, and the Daily Chronicle from London reports this. It was on the 3rd of October 1926 that the azan was heard being called out for the first time in London from the minarets of a purpose-built mosque. What was this mosque called, and who built it?
Right, the Fazl Mosque. And this, you're reading out a news story from 1926, the foundation stone of which was laid in October 1924, exactly 100 years from today.
Right.
So it's the Fazl Mosque. It's the first ever mosque in London that we're talking about.
Yeah.
First ever.
Okay.
And it's not a small thing, because we're not talking of today's London,
Yeah.
where we've got used to the cultural and religious diversity and all other types of diversities. We're talking of a time when, there were very few Muslims, in thousands, yes, maybe, but still a very small number as compared to today.
And it was colonial England.
And
Britain
we're
at the time.
talking of the empire, and we're talking of the capital of the empire where the sun never set.
Yeah.
So in there, the foundation stone of the mosque was laid by the Ahmadiyya Muslim Community for the first ever mosque in London in 1924.
And is that undisputed that this is the first mosque?
Well, of course it is. I mean, anyone can, if they want to challenge history, because it has been the first ever mosque, it remains the first.
Okay.
All historians, liberal-minded, of course,
Yeah.
and moderate-minded, of course, they cannot dispute the fact. They've always put it down as the first ever mosque to be built in London, purpose-built mosque.
And I would guess it's impartial historians as well, because they're not Muslims, a lot of these.
Yeah, I mean, even Muslims. I mean,
Okay.
Yeah, because even them, like I said, I mean, the moderate-minded, because, history is history. Facts are facts, and you can't deny them, whatever you like, whatever faith you are from. And you shouldn't.
Yeah.
I mean, why should one?
Yeah. So Ahmadis built the first mosque in
First
London,
ever mosque in
purpose-built
London.
mosque. Okay, were other Muslims attending this mosque? Because remember, it's an Ahmadi mosque. We see ourselves as Muslims,
Yeah.
but tell us about the inauguration and the other Muslims who were coming there.
Right. So there was a lot of anticipation going on about a mosque in London, not particularly this one. And I always thought, and I've written some of my articles as well, that the London Mosque Fund, which usually is called the LMF in short, was founded in 1910, which is right. But if you go back into 1904, you still find the Muslims living in Britain, in London, trying to establish a mosque. So there was a lot of anticipation going on about having a mosque in London. Since 1910, funds had been raised by the London Mosque.
Okay.
The London Mosque Fund was spearheaded by Sayyid Amir Ali, a very prominent, influential Indian Muslim figure. And the funds were huge. And we can come to that later if you like.
Yeah.
But a mosque could not be materialized.
Okay.
And the donors, they weren't ordinary people. They were like the king of Persia. They were like the king of Kabul or Afghanistan. They were like Begum of Bhopal. They were from all princely states, the Ottoman Empire, and who not.
So they're sending money
So they're
for
sending
a mosque.
thousands of pounds into this account. And the mosque doesn't just get materialized. And in the meantime, there is the news spreads that the Ahmadiyya Muslim Community, the Caliph of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Community, is traveling from India to London, and he'll be laying the cornerstone, the foundation stone of a mosque in London.
And this is 1924.
This is 1924. So there was a lot of hype.
Okay.
And Muslims too wanted to see it materialize. And the Muslim press, the way they reported it is amazing. It's just
So
superb.
you're talking about reporting on the
On the foundation stone laying,
Okay.
and reporting on all aspects of the mosque, which we'll come to later on. But if we stay at the moment within the Muslim press reporting, now this is Al-Musawwir, right? And I'm sure you'll be able to show this on the
we'll
screen
show
as
this
well.
on screen.
Now this is the news of the Ahmadiyya Caliph laying the foundation stone, right?
And so this is a Muslim
This
chronicle.
is a Muslim chronicle, using the word, saying this is the first masjid being laid.
They're accepting
The
it.
They're accepting it. I mean, what else could they do? I mean, it was happening.
Yeah.
It was being materialized, right? And then the type of, just to give you an idea of the vibe and the hype that was there. I've got Palestine Bulletin here, reporting once the mosque was opened later on. The growing Muslim community in England, which includes also Englishmen, and then they go on to name a few, is regarding the inauguration of the new mosque as the greatest event in the history of the Muslims in England.
Wow.
It is the only occasion of publicity the Muslim community in London has had for a long time. Right?
Wow.
So such was the hype. We have the Baghdad Times reporting here. Again, this is from this is before the mosque was even, when the plans were underway, saying the Ahmadiyya movement among Muslims is making steady progress in England. And then it goes on to say how they've bought this much piece of land and what they're going to do about it. And now we will soon see a mosque emerging here.
So the hype is there from the Muslim
The hype
community.
is there from the Muslim
and
community as well.
They know this is an Ahmadiyya Muslim mosque.
Of course they do,
Okay.
because it was known.
Yeah.
You see, and the press was reporting, especially, in 1924 when Hazrat Khalifatul Masih II was here. The press had been after him right from day one, wherever he went, whatever he did. He was asked, "What are you here for? We've heard that you're going to be laying a foundation stone of the mosque." Press was covering it. I mean, it was plastered all over the British press.
Right.
It's one of those unique events that happened in the history of Islam in Britain.
It's great. And that is pretty astonishing that the Muslim press is also covering this. Let's talk about the inauguration of the mosque in 1926 and the Muslims who came as well.
The Muslims had been coming, you see. I mean, even at the time of the foundation stone laying in 1924, you had the likes of Abdullah Quilliam attending.
Oh, wow.
And you had the likes of Khalid Sheldrake attending. Now, these were converts. They were Englishmen.
Very famous.
And Muslims. And very famous. And they were there, and they would offer prayers there. And then all of these prominent Muslim names from all over Britain were invited, and they came to attend. And not only at the time of the foundation stone laying or at the time of the inauguration of the mosque, even many decades after that, you had prominent Muslim figures coming. You had, Amir Faisal, Prince Faisal, later King Faisal, attending the mosque. And it's interesting, and why I mention his name first is because in 1926, at the opening, he was meant to come and inaugurate the mosque.
Okay.
And he declined last minute. He had traveled all the way from Arabia to England, and it was part of his plan, mentioned very clearly at the onset, because the purpose of the visit partly was for him to come on behalf of his father, the King of Saudi Arabia, to come and thank the British government for recognizing them, Hijaz, and the Kingdom of Hijaz.
Yeah.
He was told very clearly, the king was told, that this isn't the right time because the king isn't going to be in London. So if you still want to send him, you can send him. And the king said, no, he still has to go.
Okay.
Because the Ahmadiyya Jamaat had invited the king to come and inaugurate the mosque. He said, I can't, but my son will come.
Right.
So right from the onset, it was part of his itinerary, it was part of his schedule, but right at the last minute, his father told him, under pressure from the Muslims, because it's clearly stated, and I've got evidence for that, the communication that goes on between, because he was going to stop in Paris on his way back, between London and Paris, the government officials. So they very clearly tell him that, something strange has very happened. So this is now London telling Paris, the governments talking to each other. Something very strange has happened. The prince was meant to inaugurate a mosque, but he hasn't, because his father has told him, but not of his own accord, but under the pressure of some Muslim circles who say that this isn't a mosque and it isn't, Ahmadis aren't Muslims.
Right. Okay.
So he had succumbed to that pressure.
Okay.
So Faisal did visit.
Okay,
King
so he
Faisal.
did come for inauguration, but he visited later.
He visited later on, and other members of the Saudi royal family as well. But him particularly visiting is very important, because when he visited in 1939, Prince Faisal, he was accompanied by, because he was part of the delegation that had come for this St. James's, it's called the St. James's Palace Conference.
Okay.
It was on the Palestine conflict in 1939. So a Palestinian delegation had come, and Faisal was there also to support them in their discussions that they were going to have with the British government.
Yeah.
So the whole of the delegation attended the London Mosque alongside Faisal.
Wow.
And they were there. It was reported in the press that the prince attended the mosque along with the Palestinian delegation. A message of the head of the Ahmadiyya community, Hazrat Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad, was read out to the Palestinian delegation. We are with you. Mm-hmm. And I urge the Muslim leaders, and I urge you, that take a step in the right direction, and we are behind you. Wow. So such was so they stayed there. They, like I said, they visited on multiple occasions as well. So there you are. I mean, there is absolutely no right. I mean, especially for our Salafi brothers, I think there should remain no doubt how it was seen earlier on.
And I think it's not just, the Salafi denomination, but so many other denominations.
So many others. I mean, Faisal is a very important name, that I've mentioned here. Muhammad Ali Jinnah.
Yeah.
Baba-e-Qaum, the father of Pakistan, the founder of Pakistan, right? Jinnah was a frequent visitor of the London Mosque. So much so that he would come, he would visit, he would have discussions with the Imam of the London Mosque, who was Abdurrahim Dard at that moment. Mm-hmm. And he had kind of, he was a bit disgruntled and he had, disappointed with the state of the situation of the politics in India.
Okay.
And he'd moved to London and settled here, and he was a practicing lawyer here. But he was always seen as the only choice.
Only choice
to go back and lead the Muslims towards independence. So he visited the mosque on multiple occasions. He chose the London Mosque to come and informally announce his return into Indian politics. It was the occasion of Eid al-Azhiya. He attended the Eid ceremony. He addressed Indian students there, and other Indians as well, and delivered a speech which was titled The Future of India, or India in Future. And it was a response to the white papers on the Indian reforms that the government had recently published then. So that was when Jinnah actually informally makes his way back into Indian politics.
Wow.
Heads back to India and carries out the independence movement, leads it, spearheads it, and then comes into being Pakistan. So there you go. So the mosque wasn't an ordinary place to be. Sir Muhammad Iqbal, highly venerated by the non-Ahmadi Muslims. He was at one time he was an Ahmadi. Later on, he did have differences. He parted ways. Yep. But he remained a good friend of the community. He visited the London Mosque in 1931. I think it was October or November 1931. He was there. A ceremony was held because he came along with I think it was the Round Table Conference when he visited.
See, what fascinates me with all of these, this history. First of all, I'm pretty sure that a lot of Muslim youth, we say this a lot in the podcast, is because we want them to know the real history. They don't have a clue about this because there's now this divide between Ahmadi Muslims and the other Muslims in the UK, and they don't want to because clearly, because this is an Ahmadiyya Muslim mosque, it's the first mosque in London. The Ahmadis are clearly keeping their doors open for other Muslims to come and engage and work together. So, I guess my question would be down the line: where did this then stop? But I'm not going to answer that first.
Right.
I'm going to ask about the community that was built around, because there's a lot of reports when we go back 100 years ago, missionary Ahmadi missionary reports talking about Abdullah Quilliam. You mentioned he's there, he's speaking at the Eid sermon. There's one report I remember of 1922 of the Afghan minister Afghanistan minister who'd come to London, but he came to the London Mosque as well, and he's the Fazl Mosque, which obviously had not came into being, but the land was still there. And he said that I don't believe in the claims of Hazrat Ahmad alayhi salam, but no one can deny that the work Ahmadis are doing in spreading Islam in England and in the West is amazing. You know, and he says I have a clear difference of opinion. I'm not an Ahmadi. So tell us about the community that was formed there and the work that was happening under the Ahmadi leadership.
The Fazl Mosque, once it was established, it was known to everyone that it's an Ahmadi Muslim mosque, but it was the hub of Muslim activity in not only London but England. I mean, we must remember the interwar years are very, very important, because it's from World War I, when the clutches of the British colonial power was getting loose on the empire, on the colonies, and World War II, when they were actually ready to give away the colonies, most especially India. You know, they just want to give it self-governance and withdraw from India. So it's in that period where Muslim representation was a huge issue. So you've got the Indian question, you've got the Palestinian question, you've got the Ottoman question, you've got so much going on in the Muslim world as well as in the rest of the world. The London Mosque, the Fazl Mosque, remained a hub of Muslim representation.
Wow.
The Imams of the London Mosque were seen as representatives of Indian Muslims for a very long time, and any other questions that arose. And they would speak up for Indian Muslims. I mean, especially in the 30s, when self-governance was a very, very basic question of how to hand India over back to the native people, and how Britain is going to head back to England. The mosque and the Imam of the London Mosque, under the instruction that they received from back home in Qadian, they were representatives of all Muslims. And all Muslims, I mean, all along, all of this time, I mean, if I take you back, the press is full. I mean, I was going through some of the reports of various newspapers, Civil and Military Gazette, and I'll try and see if I have got that one in particular in here, where, so the Civil and Military Gazette, The Muslim World, was a dedicated column for the Muslim world. Okay. In there, and it was always, it says, by our Muslim political correspondent. And, for example, they write, the missionary work is a task dear to the heart of every pious Muslim, and for this reason, all of us admire the piety and devotion with which the Ahmadiyyas of Qadian have sent missions to England, to Germany, and to America. The Ahmadiyya mission have a mosque of their own in Putney, at which many Muslims of other sects, including your political correspondent, have worshipped during their stay in England.
Yeah.
So people from all sects of Islam were welcome, and they were coming there and offering prayers.
You know, if I just translate that quickly, the missionary work part, because a lot of the youth, that's basically Dawah work.
That is Dawah.
Right, that's Dawah.
Absolutely.
All the Dawah was being led by Ahmadi Muslims.
Yeah. And then another one, again from Civil and Military Gazette. It's most of it, I'm just giving as a sample of what was going on. Again, in the Muslim world, by our Muslim correspondent. Yeah. We in India are always keenly interested in the work which the London Muslim Mission are doing. The big mosque at Putney, well, it was seen as big back then. Yeah. The big mosque at Putney has for some years been a center of Muslim missionary effort in England. It is well known also that the influence of the mosque, like that of other missionaries of the community, has always been exercised on the right side, and to keep the young Muslim students in England from those dangerous influences by which they are notoriously beset. So, London Mosque was playing a role, being acknowledged by other Muslims as well. Not only then, like I said, any fair-minded and unbiased and impartial historian cannot, simply not, couldn't back then, cannot even today ignore or neglect or put aside the role that this mosque has played in history. For example, if I...
Yeah, I was going to say that. If
Yeah.
you can give some names of
Yeah,
historians
of course I can. I mean, there
who
is...
have written about this.
I'll come to a whole work
Okay.
published by Bloomsbury, which is on this topic, on the Ahmadiyya missionary activity. But before that, I have Umar Riyad, a Muslim writer, and he's writing in a book which is by Jermaine, and it's titled Islam in Interwar Europe,
Okay.
right? And this is by Umar Riyad, titled Salafiyya, Ahmadiyya, and the European Converts to Islam. I'll quickly try and read it out to you. This is quite recent, a few years ago. In the interwar period, the Ahmadiyya occupied a pioneering place as a Muslim missionary movement in Europe. They established mosques, printed missionary publications in a variety of European languages, and attracted many European converts to Islam.
Wow.
All of this happening at the London Mosque, the Fazl Mosque. After World War I, goes on Umar Riyad, after World War I, early British converts repeatedly confirmed in their writings that the Ahmadiyya mission was part of the wider Ummah. That is how even the earlier converts saw it.
Yeah.
On the one hand, we find that these Muslim reformists harshly attacked the Salafis,
Yeah.
especially in Egypt. On the one hand, we find that these Muslim reformists harshly attacked the Ahmadiyya doctrines, particularly their pacifistic view of jihad in Islam, but often praised their Dawah or missionary activities in Europe. On the other hand, we can also argue that the context of Muslims in Europe and the roles played by European converts to Islam sometimes obliged pan-Islamic reformist groups in interwar Europe to recognize and sometimes cooperate with the Ahmadiyya in serving common Islamic objectives. Now, if you want me to name some works, I mean, we've got the work of Humayun Ansari, although not dedicated to the Ahmadiyya missionary activity, but he does acknowledge their pioneering activities. We have the work of Jamie Gillam, and what is it called? It's called the Loyal Enemies. And we have a work which is completely, fully dedicated, and which is Islam in Britain by Ron Geaves.
Yeah. And this is a book.
This is a book. It says Islam in Britain, Muslim Mission in an Age of Empire. And just to give you the impetus behind this book when he was working on it, he writes, this work argues that the Ahmadis made an immense contribution in the creation of an organized Islamic presence in Britain from 1912 until the outbreak of war in 1939.
And it discusses the whole
history. The whole history from the period that he specified. But it does go obviously back into the background and how the community all started and everything.
And I think it goes back to, we'll give links to these books as well.
Yes, we do.
In the descriptions and any articles which have been mentioned. Again, I would really, really implore our Muslims, brothers and sisters who are watching this, especially if you're interested in this, read the history. There's a lot on there against Ahmadis, and it's as if Ahmadis,
you see, Father, what's interesting is that the Ahmadiyya community remains a Muslim community.
Yeah.
Right? It serves the Muslim community. Muslims appreciate and acknowledge that they're serving the Muslim cause in Europe especially.
Yeah.
Right? Where does the change happen? I mean, Iqbal, and like what I've told you just, his visit, it's not me making it up.
Yeah.
It's his son writing in Zinda Rood, the biography. So it's his son, Justice Javed Iqbal, telling us that he visited the London Mosque at the invitation of the Imam of the London Mosque, and he was a guest there. He attended an event there at the recitation of the Holy Quran, which was carried out by a young Muslim convert girl. Iqbal actually, became emotional and wept, and even gave a shilling to the little girl.
Okay.
So we've got all of that happening. When and where was that line drawn?
Yeah, that's the question.
That is the question, and that is where we see, with this level of success, envy can make you do so many things, and we don't realize when envy turns into jealousy. You see? So with this level of success, let me tell you the level of success which we spoke about at the start. How is it that a little tiny community, a nascent community, in which emerged in a very little town in India, could make a mosque when the entire Muslim world raising funds for it, and kings and princes and princesses and who not raising funds for it in thousands, couldn't. Wouldn't that have come as a shock? I'm sure it must have.
Yeah.
Because funds, like I said, were being raised in thousands. I mean, Lord Hadley goes to the Nizam of Deccan and brings back, how much was it? About 500,000 rupees.
Wow.
Right? Which was a huge sum. I think it converted to 6,000 pounds, I think. Or something
for
like
this
that.
mosque they wanted to build.
For this mosque that they wanted to build. And then they collected money. Normal appeals were going on for anyone to contribute. But they were after princes and princesses and kings. That is where they were getting all of that from.
Big donations.
So the whole of the Muslim world cannot collect enough money to establish a mosque in London. Right? They've got hundreds and thousands of pounds. They've gone to all the Muslim kings and queens and princes and princesses. And then they have to write, Lord Hadley has to write to Lord Chamberlain, to the British government, you need to sort us out. We need a mosque. Can you please do something?
So asking for the British
Asking
government
for the British
funds.
government. I'm telling you, Father, behind, this propaganda against us. You're asking me where this line was drawn. This line of propaganda, false propaganda against the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, stems out of jealousy, stems out of a very ugly shape of envy, I would say. Because behind this barrage of propaganda is the laundry which our opponents don't want anyone to see.
Yeah, they don't.
But history is history. You can't change it. They keep talking of the British government, the British Empire and Ahmadis and this and that. Fine, we acknowledge, we accept the type of a link that we've had or a relation we've had with the British Empire in the past.
In terms of
we
praise.
acknowledge in terms of praise for the
Religious
freedom that they
freedom.
gave. But what was going on? And then, where does that land come from? And it wasn't like it just took one letter. It was a request upon request from prominent Muslims from Egypt and from Cairo and from here and from there in the Muslim world to the British government. Can you please do something for us? We need a piece of land.
Yeah.
Where does this land come from, Fatir? It's gifted by His Majesty King George VI. And I say these honorific titles so that our brothers, non-Ahmadi brothers, don't mind. Oh, you didn't mention our king who gifted us this land for this mosque. You didn't mention him with due respect. So there you go. That is where the land comes from in Regent Park. It is called the Regent's Lodge, I think. The area
that was given by the British monarchy.
That was given by the British government, His Majesty's government, and it was handed over to the Muslims at that time who had asked for that land. The Ahmadi Mosque the land had been purchased with the meager little collections from poor Ahmadis, which had amounted to, I think, maybe 6,000 or 7,000 pounds. And women had contributed vehemently, with a lot of vigor, with a lot of zeal, with a lot of enthusiasm, whatever little funds they had.
This is back in India.
This is back in 1920s, from 1920 onwards.
And the donations are coming from India.
The donations were collected in India, transferred here when the mosque was being built.
Yeah.
So, there we are. And it's a piece of land purchased with subscription from poor Ahmadis, especially Ahmadi women, constructed with the subscription money collected from poor Ahmadis, especially women again. And there we have our non-Ahmadi brethren asking the British government for help. The British government, His Majesty King George VI, is there to help. He visits the mosque. He opens the plan when the construction work was going to begin. He's given a guard of honor by the Muslim soldiers there. He goes there, has a look at what's going on. He's shown the plans. And he comes happy. And the Muslims are happy as well.
This is so ironic because apparently we're the British agents and we're the ones who've, the British government has propped up.
Exactly.
And
This is the thing, Fatih. That's why I said that
and people don't know this history.
Behind this facade of propaganda, why is it otherwise that such a vigorous kind of a propaganda has to be done against us? Is because there is a lot to hide behind. It is just a facade.
It's like a confession.
It's just a facade. Yeah. Why is it? Right, they say Ahmadis are an offshoot of Islam. Right? All right, let's accept your claim for one second.
Not even offshoot. They'll say we're outside
the pale of Islam and an offshoot. So it's got nothing to do.
Yeah.
Baha'ism is an offshoot of Islam.
Yeah.
They see Ismailis as an offshoot of Islam. Right? They see Agha Khanis and other some of the Shias as an offshoot of Islam. And some of the sects as well. Why is it that so much is invested in propaganda against the Ahmadiyya community?
That's so true.
You never see them sitting and doing long streams of 8 and 9 hours against Baha'is. Why not? Why is it only the Ahmadis? Because behind this facade of propaganda is hiding a lot of laundry they do not want the rest of the world to see.
Yeah.
Gifted the mosque. So there we have a mosque built by the Ahmadiyya Muslim community with their own efforts.
Yeah. No government funding. No government funding.
Small it is.
Yeah.
But it was through the contributions of the Ahmadis. And then we have the non-Ahmadi mosque in London. They feel free to write to the government. They feel free to ask for a piece of land. They feel free to ask for donations. The land that was given to them, by the way, was estimated to be at the cost of £100,000. And we're talking back in the day, early 1940s. It's a lot of money. Early 1940s, right? So there we are. That is a little bit of a glimpse of the Fazl Mosque.
Yeah. And that mosque, of course, you can go and visit today as well. And of course, Ahmadis, our doors are always open. I think this is a history which, again, like we're saying, a lot of these podcasts we're doing, it's history which has been hidden out of envy, out of jealousy. Absolutely. There's a facade being put up, and we urge Muslims to go and read authentic sources. There's no point listening to random people online, but go to the actual academic sources, and you will be shocked.
Yes, and we want people, if you've got, because this is fact. I'm sure you'll be showing on the screen. I will provide you the references.
Yeah, we will.
And I hope you'll be able to show them to your viewers, how authentic they are. And yes, if a historian, and when I say historian, I mean proper historian.
Yeah.
Right? Not a pseudo-historian. Because these days, I find it funny, people have actually just confused two terms. They've confused research with search. Yeah. So some take a simple Google search to be research. It's not. Yeah. So you will be presenting solid academic references, and they'll just pull out a Wikipedia page and say, oh, here we are. Yeah, look, this is what it says. No, we don't want that. You can if you like. Anybody's welcome to respond in whatever way they like.
And even in today's episode, we, as Al-Hakam, we want people to respond in an academic way. Yes. But you have to bring the same level of academia.
Yes.
Give us references. Show us those academics or historians who have spoken otherwise.
And Fatir, even if it's not up to that level, we can't stop anyone. Yeah. Because, if they want to, they can. Even if they want to bring substandard kind of material, they're welcome to. Because it just only shows the reality.
Yeah, it does. We're going to carry on this topic because it's so crucial, especially for British Muslims.
Yeah.
Is there a lot more to the story in terms of Ahmadis in Britain?
There is a lot.
Yeah.
There is a lot. Okay. Ahmadis in Britain.
Give us a taste, but we're not going to go into it now. We're going to leave it for another podcast. But give us a taste of what is to come.
Right. For example, people hear these days especially a lot about Hyde Park and the Speaker's Corner there.
Yeah, of course.
That was a domain where the early Ahmadi missionaries, when they arrived here back in the day in like 1912, 1913, 1914, and from then on, that is where they would go and preach the message of Islam. That is where they were noticed. That is where they were heard. And we're talking of a time when people would have, yes, there were people who would have all sorts of, conversations, and there were always hecklers and everything. But majority of the time, people would want to listen to serious stuff.
Yeah.
And it was noticed by the press, again, the Ahmadiyya activity that went on there, how peaceful it was.
And this is during the peak of
the colonial
era. Christianity spreading
Absolutely.
everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, like Maulana Abdurrahim Nayyar, one of the early missionaries, he was noticed. I mean, he was even noticed by an author who wrote a book by the title of Hyde Park. It's something like that. Hyde
Speakers
Park,
of
it's
Hyde Park?
speakers, speakers, it's orators and its audience.
Right, okay.
So it was all about that. And then he says, oh, here we have a gentleman with a green turban, and let's see what he's standing on his pulpit, and he's telling the Christians about Islam. And then he goes on to report what he's telling them. And then at the end he says, now at the end, as the evening draws in, he gets off his pulpit, takes it, and is now making his way back. He's wary now because he's been fasting for the last 15 hours.
Wow.
That's Ramadan, right?
Wow.
And they were there.
Yeah.
We've always been there,
Yeah.
right?
I'm going to stop you there.
Yeah.
Because we want to talk about this in another episode.
Hmm.
The history of Hyde Park, how Ahmadi Muslims were there, but not just Hyde Park, but the whole of London, how they were heading the Dawah scene, if you want to call that, use that term today, in terms of Islam in Britain.
Yeah, and before you end, and while you're giving our viewers a flavor of what, inshallah, by the grace of Allah, we'll be coming back with, Ahmadi missionaries, Ahmadiyya Center, Ahmadiyya missionaries were active and functional in London and in the whole of England. When a delegation of Muslims travelled from India to the UK, to London, to come and beg the British government to save their caliphate. So we'll also talk about that.
No, definitely.
So that everyone can know, Ahmadis, non-Ahmadis, everyone can know why that heavy propaganda goes on.
Yeah.
Because there's so much to hide behind it.
Yeah, exactly.
So they say, let's make it so noisy that nobody is able to ask us a decent question. But we will.
Oh, we will. And I think there's a lot of people who are genuine and they genuinely want to know the truth.
Absolutely.
We're going to come to those topics in future episodes. Stay tuned.